Yeah, so let me transcribe them at the very end, and then I'll give them. And let me give you these. Let me give you that.
Oh.
Hang on.
Yeah.
I have the second set, which I don't
do we-
necessarily need to
there you
keep.
go.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, hang on. Here's two more.
Thank you.
We do have a lot of paper right now, so give us a moment from the previous event, so just getting all of our paper separated here.
We got more for this event though, too.
Yes, I know. Okay. I'm just trying to see what we actually have here. We were stalling because Pete had to make some copies.
And we had a lot to read.
Yeah, I don't want to tell him actually go to the bathroom, but that's all right. I have it here. It's in this big, oh, I forgot to tell you, I have one more of those. Pass that down.
I got a bunch of this stuff too.
Yeah,
Oh, you
just,
want the
yeah,
F?
hand it
Yeah.
down to her.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, we just have lots. Okay, what happened to my pencil? Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, how come I already had signed in. What happened to my computer here?
I had to do it again too.
Oh.
Got it?
Well, I don't see anything, but it's there. It was there. We had to sign in twice. Okay, sorry about that.
Have to go to the, okay.
Okay. Okay, all right.
Fun times.
So what did Renee want me to do?
Just hold.
Do this, okay. Good evening, everyone. We are calling to order the Planning Commission meeting for March 13th. According to that clock, it is now 10 minutes after 6. According to my watch, it is 10 minutes after 7. So whichever time zone you would like, we're just going to go with one of those. So as you know, we have one public hearing item on the agenda for this evening. It is file AN 16004. Also, ZC 16001, annexation and zone change of 35.65 acres north of Holcomb Boulevard. This is a continued public hearing. So we're reopening it for deliberation and discussion this evening. We actually, yes, everyone is here. Yes, everyone is here. Everyone came back. Thank you. And we appreciate your taking your time this evening to come to be at the meeting tonight. We know, I'm sure, that you have other things, as I was told by a friend, that apparently the Bachelor is going to make his decision tonight, so hopefully we'll get you out of here so you can go check that out.
Count on it.
We don't care about the Bachelor?
Oh, definitely. Get
Anyway,
it over with.
yes, we're trying to keep it light. Keep it light. All right. You're ready for me to do the deed? All right. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, that's right. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to talk to the Planning Commission about something that is not currently on the agenda? Please feel free to come forward and talk to us. We'd love to hear it. Being no one, can everybody hear me? Okay, just want to make sure. All right. So I will now commence to reread the quasi-judicial land use hearing procedure. I've already read the file number, so we are having that public hearing tonight. Staff report has been prepared and was made available 7 days prior to the opening of this hearing and the previous hearings. The staff report does identify the approval criteria that applies to each of the applicants' proposals. Staff has analyzed that criteria, and that's contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow and continues to follow as set out in state law and in the Oregon City Municipal Code. And many of you are already familiar with the hearing procedure steps that are shown on the chart to my right on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to Pete before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in order in which their card is received. You should fill out your name and any information that will help us identify you. So if we have to send you a decision, we can do that. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you do believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, please identify and discuss that criteria and explain to us why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each of the applications, and any written material received by the staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in our record. Written material submitted during the public hearing must be given to staff in order to become part of the record. And as you know, if you intend to use a PowerPoint presentation, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in your testimony to be placed in the record, please make sure you give copies to the staff. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included as part of the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony to keep the record open or respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision in which you disagree, any issue that you wish to appeal must have been raised for consideration of the City Commission or the Land Use Board of Appeals, or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and parties can respond to, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow local government or its designee to respond to that issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So we will now open the public hearing, and we will ask for any site visits, ex parte contacts, or any other conflicts of interest that may have occurred since the last meeting.
Or any that may have come up in your mind
In your
before
mind
that.
or anywhere else.
You want to start, Tom?
Yeah, I'll start. As I mentioned last time at the meeting, because I know all my neighborhood up there and I know the Sears family, I recused myself last time, so I'm going to continue to recuse myself for this meeting.
Thank you, Tom.
I've had no additional contacts and/or site visits since the last meeting.
I've been by the site since the last meeting, but that's it. No other contacts.
Nothing new to add for me.
Bob?
Nothing to comment on.
Okay. I'm going to declare for the record that I have received a number of ex parte contacts, people in the community wanting to send me things, which I referred them to staff. I also do want to say for the record that I visited the site after the last meeting, and I was sent some photographs which were part of the record, but I had already seen the site prior to receiving those photographs. Other than a comment by a person that I did not know, and I did not get their name at the grocery store yesterday, and I told them that I could not really discuss the issue because we were going to have a hearing tonight, and that they should come to the meeting if they had concerns or interest about that.
So you got emails from who?
I have one email that I just submitted to the record.
Troxler?
Yes. I gave it to you.
That is in the record.
And that was that Janice Troxler?
Yes, I believe.
Yes, and I received a phone call from Mrs. Rankin, and I referred her information to Mr. Walter.
Photographs.
Text message pictures.
Yes, I mentioned that already.
Yeah,
And
those are in the
text
record.
message pictures are in the record?
Yes.
Yes, and as I stated for the record, I had already been to the site prior to receiving those pictures, so I did not see anything in the pictures that I had not already seen myself by physically being near the property. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to challenge the comments made by the commissioners?
Chair McGriff, members, Chairperson McGriff.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Chair, Chairperson McGriff, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Mike Robinson. I'm here on the applicant. I don't wish to challenge the Planning Commission, but I would like to see the ex parte contact, the email, so I can decide whether it requires a rebuttal to the substance.
Attached to the agenda.
Is it what you gave me tonight, Pete, that large
It
packet?
was published with the agenda last week.
Was, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nothing new.
All right, thank you.
All right, is there anything else? Okay, Mr. Walter, you are off to the races, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson McGriff. I appreciate that.
Or just Denise, that works for me.
I apologize for the length of the record. I know some people had trouble finding where the exhibits are when they read the agenda, but the exhibits are all on the second page of the agenda, and there's a big list of them. That's the way our software program works. So, my presentation will mainly address the exhibits that have been placed into the record since the last hearing. The first slide indicates the location of the site. It's approximately 35 acres north of Holcomb Boulevard, abutting Holcomb Elementary School and the Winston Hills subdivision. 6 tax lots currently zoned future urban, 10-acre minimum. It's been in the urban growth boundary since 1979. It's not part of the Park Place concept plan. That is the area to the south of Holcomb Boulevard. The Oregon City Comprehensive Plan designation is low-density residential, which has a corresponding city zoning on annexation of R10. And if this annexation and zoning is approved with the conditions of approval attached to it, the zoning will be effective upon annexation. However, no development may occur until the applicant has addressed certain transportation requirements. We'll talk about that briefly. This is an aerial photograph which can refer back to. You can see the locations of the urban growth boundary and the current city limit. This is a 2015 photograph. Hearings, there have been several. The most recent is the Planning Commission hearing, which was continued from February 27th. And the City Commission hearing has been continued to April 5th. This is a Type 4 proceeding. All new evidence must be submitted before the Planning Commission closes the public record. The City Commission review of this proposal will be on the record and limited to evidence submitted before the Planning Commission. After considering the recommendation by the Planning Commission, the City Commission will make a determination as to whether this application meets the criteria for approval under Section 14.04060 of Oregon City Municipal Code. New items that were sent out with the agenda packet included the comments from ODOT, from Seth Brumley, addressing the condition of approval. All of the public notices which we have provided to date were included, and staff's emails to a party that lives outside the urban growth boundary regarding the land use notice is also included, and I'll explain that. We also have included the tree removal photos and texts from Tom Guile, as well as the letter that we talked about just before from Mrs. Troxler that was sent to Chairperson McGriff. The new items entered this evening you a packet of, they include a summary response letter from Mike Robinson, an email from Mike Robinson with a letter and a map from Rick Givens illustrating the access points into the subdivision, and a map of the 20-foot strip that is on the east side. I'll show you a slide of that. The Winston Acres recorded plat of 1912 submitted by the applicant. The Winston Hills recorded plat from 1971 submitted by the applicant. ODOT's comment letter, and we do have a letter from the Oregon City School District. Wes Rogers is here tonight to present that letter to you. He's the school district facilities superintendent. We have a written letter of support from Mr. Dierkman of the Barlow Crest subdivision, a memo from the city engineer who is with us this evening, Alita Froman-Goodrich, regarding stormwater standards. When Bob LaSalle testified at the last hearing, there was a letter which we didn't have a copy of, so we're including that written testimony in your packet this evening. It accompanied a map that showed the development in and around the subject site. And a written letter we received today from Mike and Jan Grady. That's what I've received so far. Just want to talk about our public notice procedure. Under our code, we have an obligation to provide notice of a public hearing to all record owners of property within 300 feet of the subject property. This is a local notice area boundary which exceeds the state mandate of 100 feet. When we generate mailing labels for land use applications, we use our mapping program, which is called GIS, or Geographic Information System. Due to a technical error, that mapping program had left off some addresses for owners outside the city limit. I'll show you a slide of what that entailed. We did provide hand mail notice to those property owners once we discovered the error, and they notified us of it. We also provide notice in the newspaper. The applicant is required to post signs on the property per code, which they did do twice, and they signed affidavits of posting in compliance, which are in the record. Those signs did fall into disrepair, but the applicant reposted the damaged signs on posts on March 6, 2017. So the sign was posted in accordance with the signs were posted in accordance with the city code. I apologize for the complexity of this slide, but what I've done here is show the computer-generated 300-foot notice buffer that our GIS generates. The area of the annexation is outlined in yellow, along with the city limit and the urban growth boundary. I've attempted to show the Winston Hills subdivision just to the east, which is a light blue boundary, and then the Barlow Crest subdivision, which abuts that. Winston Hills is a county subdivision, and there's a 20-foot strip of land separating the Winston Hills County subdivision from the Barlow Crest City subdivision. Subsequently, this does not technically create an island. There are findings in the record with respect to this issue, not only with respect to just the separation of the property from the due to the presence of a 20-foot strip, but also due to the fact that public facilities and services would not be duplicated through the annexation process. There are already existing agreements with Clackamas River Water to serve city subdivisions in this area due to the HOPP agreement, which is an intergovernmental agreement we have with Clackamas River Water to serve certain development above a pressure zone in this area. The area outside the urban growth boundary where we accidentally had inadvertently left 3 property owners off the notice list is shown in the area that's sort of light reddish shading there. What this does show, though, and this is the point we're trying to emphasize, is that 300-foot notice buffer only takes in part of some of the lots in these subdivisions. So if you own a tax lot within the same subdivision that's not within that 300-foot buffer area, you're not going to receive a mailed public notice. If that buffer touches the edge of a tax lot or is within a tax lot, then that's what the mailing label will generate from. So it's strictly a computer-generated thing. In addition to the other newspaper and sign posting. The Winston Acres plat of 1912 is an older subdivision. The annexation area is shown in red outline within that. And the area that I've shaded in yellow indicates from that plat the 20-acre strip that is to the east of the subject property.
20 foot.
Pardon?
20 foot.
20 foot. What did I say? 20
Acre.
acre? Yeah, sorry, 20 foot wide. I've blown that up on the right side so you can see a little bit better. Since 1912, there's been partial vacation of some of that strip, included in lots that are now within the Winston Hills subdivision, which will show you. The Winston Hills plat was subdivided from lots 9, 10, and 11 of the Winston Acres plat. And you can see the location of that 20-foot wide strip on the Winston Hills plat as well. And this is where Winston Drive and Armel Drive come into the property. And this plat was recorded in 1971. The annexation factors that we mentioned previously require adequacy of access to the site, conformity with the comprehensive plan, adequacy and availability of city public facilities and services to service potential development, compliance with the Oregon Revised Statutes and Metro Code 309, identification of natural hazards such as wetlands, floodplains, and steep slopes, any significant adverse effects on specially designated open space, scenic, historic, or natural resource areas by urbanization of the subject property at the time of annexation, and lack of any significant adverse effects on the economic, social, and physical environment of the community by the overall impact of the annexation. At the previous hearing, we presented our staff report with findings of compliance for each of these factors, and we've made the recommendation that we have made that we feel as staff the application does meet the majority of these factors, if not all these factors. The four main public facilities plans that deal with this area are our Transportation System Plan, 2013, a Water Distribution Master Plan, which was 2012, Sanitary Sewer Master Plan from 2014, and our Stormwater and Grading Design Standards, 2015. Each of these plans accounted for an increased demand that would be generated in the future by the zone change in this area and identifies recommended improvements intended to serve the area. In addition to that, applicants are required to pay fee in lieu of construction or construct all public facilities to serve their property, and that includes oversizing facilities if need be, as well as paying system development charges with building permits, providing dedication of land for streets, and water, sewer, and stormwater connections to serve the site. And there's a specific discussion of all of these items in detail in the staff report. With respect to the transportation condition, as you know, that we have certain intersections which are already over capacity that are affected by a zone change in this area. Lancaster Engineering has provided a transportation impact analysis that looked at 3 intersections, and 2 of those are the ones that are identified as needing further study and refinement plan before any development can occur in this area. So we have attached a condition of approval that states that in essentially no development shall be allowed in this area until, for these 2 intersections, in the first case, the Oregon 213 Redland Road intersection, which is an ODOT intersection, will have a refinement plan adopted and acknowledged, including specific projects, performance standards, which include alternative mobility standards, and code amendments. And those issues would be dealt with through a separate legislative file that must be adopted through the Planning Commission, City Commission, before any development can occur in this area. This second intersection studied, which is a non-ODOT intersection, is the Redland Road, Holcomb Boulevard, Abernathy Road. And a fairly similar set of criteria of conditions are attached to that. Specifically, alternative mobility standards must be adopted. We must make amendments to the Transportation System Plan and the City Code that satisfy the performance standards, and or the applicant will pay a proportional share for any identified improvements that come out of that process for any future subdivision. This condition was drafted with the assistance and agreement of ODOT staff in collaboration with our city transportation consultant and the applicant's transportation engineer. So the complete text of that condition is provided in the recommended findings. We have some new agency and city comments. I mentioned these earlier. Letter from Wes Rogers with Oregon City School District referring to the most recent demographic studies and how they expect capacity of the school district to be affected in the next few years. Memorandum from Alita Froman Goodrich, city engineer, regarding our stormwater standards, and a letter from ODOT agreeing to the condition of approval attached to the annexation and not. They do not have a conflict with the annexation and rezoning. Our recommendation on this proposal, AN 1604, ZC 1600, sorry for the zeros, 001, to the City Commission. We recommend you make a recommendation based on whether or not you feel that the factors have been met. We've prepared draft findings, and we stand ready to adjust them if needed. If you decide to send forward a positive recommendation to the City Commission, then we recommend that you forward the proposed findings and reasons for decision, which are listed 1 through 14 at the back of the staff report for adoption by the City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions of staff? Anything new that he mentioned that we didn't talk about before? Yes, sir.
So, Pete, talk to me about this 20-foot strip and why that
Keeps coming up.
isn't.
The applicant has prepared a really good summary of that,
Okay.
and I would recommend that you ask them directly.
All right.
Yeah.
Really like to hear from staff. Any other questions? Okay. I did want to say one thing before I call up the first folks to speak. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. And even if you haven't signed up to testify, you're just being here is encouraging. I do want you to know that we have heard a lot of testimony, and we, of course, are extremely interested in hearing what you have to say, particularly if you have new information. We will be keeping a little bit stricter time tonight, and if you feel for some reason that you might need a little extra time, please just let me know. We will try to keep to the 3 minutes and the time frame for the neighborhood association and for the applicant. Again, we do appreciate the fact that you are here. It's sometimes playing to an empty house is not always enjoyable, and sometimes playing to a full house is a little more stressful, but that's why we're here. So we would appreciate it. Again, Laura will be keeping, you've got the little box there, thank you, with the time limit. So if you see, for some reason, you are colorblind, let us know that too. Green obviously means go. Yellow means your time is, how many minutes do they have when the yellow light goes on?
It's getting close, but I think it's around 30 seconds for the most part.
Okay, and then red means, well, you know what red means. So we certainly appreciate it. All right, with that, go ahead and, I already did the gavel thing, so we will call the applicant.
Good evening, Chairperson McGriff and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Michael Robinson. I'm a land use attorney here on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. I think, as Chairperson McGriff said, you've heard a lot of evidence and argument. But what we'd like to do tonight is summarize the things that seemed of most interest to the public in the Planning Commission from last week, explain to you why we agree with the staff report findings and the conditions of approval, and ask you at the conclusion of our testimony and of everyone's testimony tonight that you close the public hearing and make your recommendation to the City Commission. Pete noted that we submitted a letter to you today. I'm sorry it couldn't have been to you sooner, but I think if you read through it, if you've had the time and you have the time during the hearing, you'll find that it's essentially a summary of many of the things we've already said. It also notes some of the argument and evidence regarding the notice issue and regarding the school district testimony. So let me just walk through our testimony tonight, and please, as always, if you have questions for me or for Mr. Givens or Mr. Ard, who are with us tonight also, feel free to ask us questions. So first of all, we agree with the staff report that the application satisfies the 7 factors for annexation in OCMC 1404060. The letter summarizes in more detail what Mr. Walter has already told you in the staff report and what Mr. Givens' application says. But the 4 main points I would make is there's adequate access to the site. The public facilities and services are or will be available to the site based on the city's acknowledged plans that Mr. Walter showed you a moment ago. There are no impacts to resources. There's that small area on the north end. We can certainly address that in the land division stage. And we recognize that the Barlow Trail is partly on this property, and the land division application will again take that into consideration. There are no significant adverse impacts to the economic, social, or the other aspects of that factor that you're supposed to consider in terms of impacts to the community. This area has been in the urban growth boundary for 38 years. And so the impacts that you're going to get are no different from any other urban areas. You do get light pollution, you get noise, you get other things. But this application is not expected to be any different from any other urban neighborhood in Oregon City. And all of the services and impacts that those services have to address will be dealt with and can be dealt with successfully based on the city's good planning efforts and based on the evidence that's in the record. Secondly, the Oregon City School District submitted a comment letter dated March 9, 2017. If you'll read the comment letter, if you've had an opportunity to do that, especially page 1, it notes that there's current secondary school capacity considering the expected student generation from this site, and that there would just be a slight reduction in capacity in 2026, 2027, which is 10 years out. That gives the school district a lot of
What's the date of the letter?
March 13, 2017.
Okay.
Did I?
March 9th.
I
so-
probably did, but
Okay,
it's
that's
March.
fine.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
We're looking at the right thing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Maybe it's March 13. But the point is, it'll only be shy by 5 students capacity. That's 10 years away. That's more than sufficient time to allow the subdivision to be built out and for the school district to provide that little additional capacity. The Oregon Department of Transportation and the city's traffic engineer agreed that the transportation system will have adequate capacity based on the city's transportation system plan that's adopted, and that guides how the city makes transportation investments. Also remember, we are conditioned through condition of approval 14 not to develop until we've done the things that that commission requires us to do. And this is all based on substantial evidence in the form of Mr. Ard's transportation impact analysis and also his additional letter dated March 8th, 2017. And at the end of all that, we nevertheless have to continue to comply with Oregon City Municipal Code 12.04. It's entitled Streets. It requires us to do yet another traffic impact analysis at the time we submit our land division application and meet certain standards. So combined with the acknowledged TSP, the evidence you have in the record, and our ongoing application to satisfy both, our ongoing obligation to satisfy both Condition of Approval 14 and OCMC Chapter 12.04, you can find that transportation will be adequate by the time the land division is proposed and approved. Stormwater services. Given the kind of month that we've had in terms of rain, it's probably easy if you visited the site to see standing water. We took particular care in addressing that in our application, and as long as we follow the city's stormwater master plan, plus the guidelines that Ms. Alita, if I get her name wrong, I apologize.
Roman Goodrich.
Roman Goodrich.
Thank you for your help. Ms. Roman Goodrich provided you in her letter, then it's clear that we can provide adequate storm drainage. And I would say, and I suspect all of you are aware of this, farm property is not drained as well as urban developed property. It's clear that the evidence in the record is that we can meet the stormwater standards. One issue that came up that's not particularly relevant to this application, but nevertheless we wanted to address it, is whether we can provide 2 access points to the site. It's not required by your code, but it's required by the fire code. That's why we had Mr. Givens put a letter into the record that explains how 2 access points from Holcomb Road can be provided. no island is created. The 20-foot strip separates the portions of the property that is in the city now from this area. It means that there is no county island created. But I would tell you, even if there were a county island created, neither ORS Chapter 222, Metro Code 3.09, or your comprehensive plan prohibit the creation of an island. The comprehensive plan has a policy on it, but it's aspirational. It uses the word may. It's not mandatory because it doesn't use the word shall. And my final 3 points, the comprehensive plan anticipates development of the site. As I've already noted, it's been in the UGB since 1979. Attachment, or one of the exhibits to my letter, are pages from the comp plan. If you've not looked at them, I encourage you to do so. I think the comp plan lays out a nice statement about how the city views the urban growth boundary and how that UGB is going to be developed through annexations. And the one thing that I think is especially important to remember is that it expressly says you're not looking at land division criteria at this stage. And of course, you don't have a land division application before you. You have an annexation and zoning map amendment. We understand we have to do a land division application. As I said a moment ago, we have to comply with, among other criteria, OCMC Chapter 12.04. But all of those issues are commonly dealt with at that stage, not now. Nevertheless, we wanted to do the best we could to answer the questions that you've asked and the public has asked about those factors. Lastly, I think Pete did a nice job of describing notice. A number of people raised questions about the notice. The conclusion that I think you can draw from the evidence before you is that the applicant complied with the city notice requirements. As a courtesy, the applicant reposted the site on March 6th. We weren't required to, but we thought that was the right thing to do. Tree felling came up a couple of times. As the Planning Commission has acknowledged, it's not an approval criterion. I don't know that there are any other facts or issues we want to describe to you tonight. We're happy to answer your questions and talk to you about what's on your mind. But what I've just told you is a summation of the reasons that you can find that evidence in the record satisfies the approval criteria, not just Chapter 14, which is the annexation factors, the comprehensive plan policies, and we've adequately addressed, I believe, the issues that have been raised before this commission. So we ask that you listen to everybody tonight. We'll have a chance in rebuttal to answer more questions, and we're happy to do that. But at the conclusion of public testimony, we hope that you'll close the record and make a recommendation. We think you can make a positive recommendation in the City Commission, and that you should, based on the state of the record before you. We appreciate your time, and again, I urge you to ask us questions if you have them. I'd hate for you to make a negative recommendation and not have asked a question that influenced your decision. So thank you, Chairperson McGriff and Commissioners, for your time tonight.
So I just have a slight correction for you on page 5 of your note, that unless Wes has been promoted, which I don't think he has, even though that might be a nice promotion, he is not our current school superintendent. He is our facilities manager for school district, Reagan City School District. So just props to Wes. he called you the superintendent.
My apologies, but I'm glad you're reading my letter. Thank you.
State.
That's what I say to my dog, Mr.
Yes,
Nobby.
it just popped out at me. Unfortunately, I have not had time to read the whole thing.
At least part of it.
I
Thank you.
didn't mean to make it that preemptive.
That's okay. I like my dog.
So, the 20-foot strip, let's talk about that.
Chairperson McGriff, could we go back to that slide, please? Show the
You can
strip.
ask Pete that. I have no control over the slides.
There it is, Commissioner, maybe.
One more. There, that's good. Kind of, sort of, I guess.
There's also an exhibit in your packet.
Right, that's what I'm
okay.
looking at. But
Yeah.
so, and I read your earlier information about from the title company and how it switched back and forth through a lot of different people over the course of decades. So you referred to the 20-foot strip in at least this letter that was in the original packet, where it talks about the title transfers and all that, as a private road.
I didn't refer to it as a private road. I said it was a 20-foot strip, Commissioner, maybe, that meant that we weren't creating an island with
I
this
hope this
annexation.
is sufficient for you to determine that the property was created legally as a private road. Quote.
Is that in my letter?
Well, Rick is who.
Yeah, Mr. Rick Givens said that. I didn't say that.
Oh, you're right. I apologize. Okay. In the letter that Rick Givens wrote, where he refers to it as a private road, I guess my question is, if it is a private road, and it is adjacent to your property that you wish to annex, it's generally been my understanding that half-street improvements are required when properties are going to be improved upon. And so at some point you would subdivide this. That is a road. A half-street improvement would have to occur, and at that point, like it happens with other annexations, that, you know, county roads and such, it would become city property. So wouldn't that then close off the escape point for the island?
Commissioner, maybe let me respond to your question. So we raised this issue because at the February 27th hearing, someone asserted that
It was an island.
it was an island, and
Right.
we wanted to do our due diligence and make sure we answered that question for you. So first of all, what you said at the beginning is accurate. It's a private road. If it's out, my understanding of how your subdivision ordinances work, and I'll defer to your staff and your assistant city attorney, is an applicant would not be required to construct a half-street improvement for a private road. Secondly, if it is outside of the city, I don't believe an applicant would have an obligation to construct a half-street improvement. I think the obligation arises under the Oregon City Municipal Code when you have when you're within the city and it's a public road. Because if it is a private road, we have no authority to improve it, and I don't believe, I just take this position, I don't believe the city would have authority to require us to improve non-public property. That would require us to encroach upon a private ownership. So I think your question is a good one, but I think the facts suggest that an applicant to subdivide this site would not have to improve that road. Now, let me finish my answer by saying this. Obviously, that's something that may or may not come up in the land division stage. So if it came up in the land division stage and staff thought what I've just described to you is inaccurate and they imposed a condition and we believe the condition was, sorry, it's hard for me to hear out of my right ear, and anyway, sorry. If we believe that it was, the condition was appropriate, then obviously we do it. But based on the facts that we've discussed tonight, Commissioner, maybe I don't think there's a legal obligation to improve a road that's not public, for which we don't have permission to do it from the owner, and that's not inside the city.
Who is the owner of that property?
Do not know.
Okay.
Gentlemen, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
So everybody can hear it. Yes, Damon?
I would like to call him.
For the record, Rick Givens, planning consultant for the applicant. I was talking briefly with Mr. Sears, Dan Sears. That roadway used to provide access to the property to the north. I believe it's Cherriere property, which, I don't know if you have the tax map we can look at.
Let's see. This is the location of the strip.
Yeah,
But
it's not, no longer, that part of it is no longer used as a driveway. It's a 20-foot strip of land. The part of it that is contiguous to the property has now been transferred back to the Sears family. So they own the strip as well, but are not including it in the annexation application.
okay,
But it no longer serves any road function.
so it serves no purpose other than to create the legal fiction island.
It's not a fiction, it's a fact, and that's why it's left out. But yes, the purpose of leaving it out was to avoid having an island, so that issue would not be part of this application. But as Mr. Robinson noted, there's no absolute requirement by the comprehensive plan against the creation of an island. We just didn't choose to make it be an issue.
So, well, I guess it's not an appropriate question, but Is there at some point a plan by the family to develop that 20-foot strip? I mean, it serves no purpose other than to get annexed into a development at some point.
I can't answer that question for you. Various things could happen to it in the future. It could be done through a property line adjustment, transferred to adjacent ownership. But right now, it's a 20-foot strip.
Okay.
Well, it might provide a nice buffer. Put a hedge, okay. All right. Yes, my favorite, yes.
And Laurel.
Yes, everyone knows that arborvitae is
Thank
my
you.
favorite. Okay, thank you. All right, since I see no further questions for the applicant, we'll move on to Mr. Rogers, Wes Rogers, who was superintendent for 5 minutes here. Thanks for coming. We won't tell Larry anything. This is not a public record, of course.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be with you tonight, Chairperson McGriff and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Wes Rogers, for the record, Wes Rogers. I'm the Director of Operations for the school district. Wanted to bring some enrollment and capacity information for you tonight, as this development is in the Holcomb Elementary attendance boundary area, as well as Ogden Middle School and all of our high schools, of course. You'll notice in the letter that I submitted that we updated the information to our 2017 draft enrollment forecast, which is currently, as we speak, being presented to the school district board tonight at a school board meeting. You'll note that our current enrollment is just slightly under 500 students, and that our capacity as measured last year by a consultant is approximately 564 students. It doesn't mean that the 565th student sits outside the building in the wide open spaces. It just means that's our preferred capacity, and we can obviously go below that, and we can obviously go a little bit above that as well. And you'll notice some of the 5-year and 10-year forecasts for that as well, based upon current development projects in the area are at slightly below what a current enrollment is, but also slightly above that. And if you extrapolate the current enrollment of 498 and go to the 26-27 forecast, you'll be a few students above that in 10 years. And I'll speak to the longer term in my closing comments. I did note that the average ratios that Mr. Given sent me, and I attached as attachment A to my letter, those ratios are still valid. I checked with the demographer last week, and he assured me that those are still valid for district-wide averages. I did point out in my comments that the current Sunnybrook Ridge, which is the new development on the other side of Holcomb Elementary, we still do not have a student enrolled at Holcomb Elementary from that subdivision. So these are district-wide average ratios, and sometimes they're higher and sometimes they're lower. I did want to point out also that there was a comment in my request to be here about the other annexation that's being considered in the area. And of course, that's not considered tonight, but I would just generally note that that's not in the Holcomb attendance area. That's actually in the Redland Elementary School attendance area. And we'll be glad to provide comments about that specific annexation request when it comes before the commission. I'd just like to summarize my comments by saying that the district is well aware of its enrollment and capacity challenges as we go forward here in the next 5 to 10 years. We do an annual update to our enrollment forecast, so we're always measuring current trends and what's happening within our boundaries. I would point out that we've just finished a facilities study, a very in-depth facilities study, and are drafting a plan for the next 10 years that we would love to submit to the voters as a construction bond request. We call it bond renewal request, as our bond that built the high school back in 2003, 2004 is going to be maturing here soon. And in both the 5-year forecast of our current bond scenario, we show that we'll be adding capacity at the middle school level for future developments in the Ogden area, and that in the 5 to 10 year frame, we hope to bring online additional enrollment capacity in the Ogden area as well. So I believe in the future we'll have some capacities there to take care of growth in the future. Love to answer any questions you might have for me.
Gentlemen?
How many classrooms are in in Holcomb Elementary? It's a K through 8,
It's
isn't
a
it?
K-5 school.
K5.
K-5.
Okay.
It has 3 modular buildings as well as the main
Right.
building itself.
So I know I'm sure I've.
Hang on. So what is the
Yeah.
capacity, not counting trailers?
These aren't trailers. These
Well,
are
they're modules trailers. They're modular buildings that have been moved
they
in.
have foundations on them.
Right, okay,
And
so-
so forth. So we don't consider them trailers. Some
Right.
people, in the early days, they would have been, but
Right,
now
okay.
today's modular building, it's not. But without that, you would be dropping down close to 500.
Sorry.
Okay.
But our future plan is to either replace that capacity. Our template for an elementary school going forward is a 600-student school. That's our prototype.
So then I'm assuming that you have to have a couple of classrooms for each grade level then
Yes, we do.
to accommodate that, because
Yes.
if I was just to assign one class to each and crunch the numbers, I come up with an astronomical number per classroom. And so I didn't quite understand, how you got to the actual capacity and how many kids are based. I mean, how is your capacity determined? How many kids are in each classroom?
Currently, the capacity number is 28 students at the
Okay.
elementary level per classroom.
Okay.
And then it is prorated a bit at 564 because all of our elementary schools have dedicated space for students with special needs.
Right.
And so those are much, much lower enrollment numbers in those spaces.
Okay.
But generally, in a regular sized classroom, it would be a size of 28.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Your capacity evaluations are based on areas which go far beyond the city limits, are they not?
Yeah, the school district is around 50 to 55 square miles. So yes, we're very much further out than the city limits.
So this annexation is somewhat smaller than what you include in your estimates.
As far as related to our total elementary enrollment throughout the school district?
Yeah, your
Correct.
total-
Yeah, we have.
your total capacity to serve.
Correct. Yeah, we have 6 elementary schools on 7 different sites, and so this is 1/6 of our enrollment capacity. Generally, around 1/6 of our enrollment capacity at the elementary level.
I guess what I'm leading to is the annexation of this property is not going to impact the Oregon State School District that much.
As Mr. Givens stated in his letter to me, right now our district-wide enrollment ratio for a single-family dwelling would be 0.28 students. So if you take that times approximately 124 lots, I believe it is, you're in the mid-30s as the number of students that would be enrolled here from that development. Understanding that's applying a district-wide average and that a development to the east of us, which is a similar demographic of a development, I believe. We may see lower than that because currently out of those 30 homes, we don't have a student at the elementary level.
Wes, thanks for the comments, and I want to give a moment for you to just say a little bit more about the bonding, because I know it's especially sensitive with people thinking about tax increases, even if it's 10 years out.
Yeah.
But with, is the intent that with the high school's bond coming up, and with a considering of a vote going to the people for a new bond, that this would actually not be an impact on as new taxes?
Well, it depends on exactly which plan is presented to the voters.
But that is a potential scenario?
There would be if we didn't. I'm sure at this point. Let me just state that the board is considering multiple scenarios, and one of them is a non-tax increase, just a straight renewal of the rate.
Okay, and I know we're on the edge of that scope there, but I just wanted to get a little bit more. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I've got a couple. You mentioned that the template for future schools is 600, so I understand that there are 2 elementary schools that sit up in this area, so why are we not talking at all about Park Place Elementary School, which I presume we as taxpayers still own?
You do.
Okay.
Yes, you do. And we do lease it out to a public charter school, and we make we do receive lease income from that public charter school. So it is a public school. It is a very successful public school. And the school district is very committed to educational choices in the school district, and this is one of them. Chairperson McGriff is speaking to Park Place Elementary School. Park Place Elementary School, in our facilities study, and even prior to this in 2008, was deemed before 2008 was deemed to be a sister school to Holcomb, and the concept was possibly to have them be linked together as far as being administered and operated. Subsequent to 2008, after studying the concepts of that and the challenges of it, it was decided that we would break that long-term view of it and that it would be a standalone building and site unto itself. Hence why we leased it to a public charter school. And since then, our prototype, that the site itself is much smaller than we would ever want to put a current elementary school on, as well as the fact that the square footage of the school is much smaller than you could ever put 600 students in. And today's elementary schools require a lot more support space and also public green space for outdoor PE classes, outdoor classrooms, and for community uses in the neighborhoods and so forth. And so at this point, we are taking another look at Park Place School and deciding exactly what the long-term future of that might be. That is not, I would make it clear that in my comments about adding additional enrollment elementary capacity in the Ogden Middle School area, that does not include Park Place School coming back online.
Okay, well, let me just ask you a hypothetical question. Since the school district and the community still own the school still could be in play to deal with capacity issues, because, you know, there's some parents I'm aware of that don't feel 28 students it's too big of a classroom. So that school still could be hypothetically used at some point in time should the school district make that decision. So not necessarily an answer, but let me bring up another point. You mentioned that you just finished a facility study, and I'm a little dismayed because I was hoping that we might be involved with you on that, and so I'm going to put out the invitation that I put out once before, is that we would like to have a meeting with you all to talk about that, because we are integrated. We should be integrated more in terms of what the school district is doing and what the City of Oregon City is doing, and I feel very, very strongly about that, and I've made that request to staff on several occasions that we get together. I've also made that request in person to the superintendent, so let me extend that again. We've had joint meetings with other bodies, the City Commission, Transportation Advisory Committee, Parks, Historic Review Board, and extend that to the school district. So that facility study, you say, talks about templates for schools, because I know a lot of people in the community are very concerned about the capacity issues. So you basically feel that this study, which of course we'd love to see, is going to help adequately address some of those future needs for any future development that could be occurring anywhere within the school district boundaries, particularly the City of Oregon City.
As I stated before, we study our enrollment capacities and enrollments every year. And so far, it's surprising to people that I talk to that the school district is much smaller than it was when I moved to this community in 1985. And we're hoping that that trend line is now going to change and that we'll start seeing more students, more households choosing to send their students to local public schools. And we believe that one of those key elements is going to be modernized and transformed educational spaces for the school district and for parents to choose to send their students to. As far as meeting with the school board, I will surely take back your request to the chair of the school board and offer that for you to meet in work session and to share your concerns, as well as working together in the future and so forth. The Facilities Advisory Committee report is publicly posted on our website, and I have shared that with city staff, and we'll obviously, again, send the link over to them as well. As soon as our enrollment report is finalized and made publicly available after final review, I will definitely get that over to planning staff as well so that you can see that going forward as well. Yes, Park Place School, as long as the district owns it, hypothetically could be used for student enrollment.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yep.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Laura, can you make sure that we get that report? And for me personally, I will be happy to pay for a hard copy. I'm not going to read it online. I'm sure it's huge. All right, we have next up on deck William Gifford. Got any more slips for me?
Chairperson McGriff and planning commissioners, my name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City, and I'm speaking tonight from the perspective of the Oregon City Business Alliance, of which I'm secretary. I would like to address the applicable approvable criteria with sufficient specificity, but I have some overarching comments to give that context. Number one is the property in question that you are considering annexing, as has been noted, has been in the urban renewal or in the urban growth boundaries for decades. What's being asked at this time should be no surprise to anybody. Anybody in that area should have known that this is needed to be developed. And I would propose a new acronym besides NIMBY of Not in My Backyard, just one I made up, called STUDBY, which is shut the door behind you. There are people that live in that region that, now that they're there, forget the impact that the development that they're living in had for that whole area. And that's enough about that. At the previous commission meeting, I heard about 5 groupings of comments: traffic, water, school, park, and trees. The traffic issue, to my satisfaction, has been met by condition 14. There will be no development until the areas impacted have been dealt with. Regarding the water, that is a natural issue that will have to be addressed. There's no getting around that. But I think that can't be a criteria for denying the annexation unless someone could prove that that water problem absolutely cannot be solved. And I disagree with that. I think with sufficient engineering, that can be solved. The school issue, I think Mr. Rogers has addressed the capacity issue, and that should be taken off the table. There was an issue about a park, and I heard a neighbor talk about the fence around the school, and yet in a conversation with Mr. Rogers, the school district actually encourages the use of their property by the public. So I don't think that is going to be an issue regarding parks. Trees, I have to say that strategically I think it was possibly not the wisest move to remove those trees at this point, but the fact of the matter is trees can be replaced. From my perspective, trees add value to property and should be kept whenever possible. However, it's the property owner's prerogative at this point, and I don't think that that's a criteria for denying an annexation because the property owner has removed trees. That's it. Oh, I have another
bit of time.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Mr. Gifford, I have
Please.
a point of information. You mentioned that you were speaking on behalf of the Business Alliance Group, but yet the majority of your testimony was basically your opinion. So which is it? And the reason I'm asking is because if you're authorized to speak on behalf of the Business Alliance, Did they vote?
It's not
for
my
that, or-
opinion.
Okay.
We have discussed this matter extensively.
I'm just trying to get it clear in my head.
As clear as possible, I can say that this is the consensus of the directors of the Oregon City Business Alliance.
And that was voted on
It was not a vote.
Okay.
I'm saying by consensus.
at a recent meeting?
At multiple recent meetings, yes.
Okay. Sorry, I was just confused because you said we and then you started saying I.
I apologize for
So
the
I
grammar.
wasn't sure who you were speaking
Excuse me, we
for.
apologize for the grammar.
We apologize for our grammar.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. School Teacher. Any questions for Mr. Gifford before he wanders away? All right. Christine Kaczynski. Thank you. You hold off a minute, Laura, while this stuff is getting passed down.
Christine Kaczynski, unincorporated Clackamas County. I'm talking about the annexation factors. On number 3, the adequacy of public facilities is an issue. On factor 5, natural hazards, wetlands is an issue. Number 6 and number 7, the adverse effects, especially because of the trees that have been taken down. Those were mature trees. Trees hold a lot of water. Now that the trees are gone, the only thing that's going to be replaced is little stick trees from development. Those are not going to help much in taking up the water. So there will be a lot of effects from the trees being taken down. The stormwater system is inadequate to service the area where a high water table, vast amounts of underground springs, and wetlands exist. Adverse effects due to urbanization of this area have already occurred in the Sunnybrook subdivision, where several homeowners have been forced to install sump pumps due to heavy accumulation of water under their homes. This has not only been a financial burden on the homeowners, but when homes are built on wetland and in areas with high water tables, the foundations sit in water many months of the year. The constant moisture eventually grows black mold inside these homes, seriously compromising the health of children and those with compromised immune systems. Hearings should continue for the annexation and zone change for these 35.65 acres, while a thorough hydrology and soil report is completed. Additionally, the city should study the health of the Park Place drainage basin, its many channels, drainage ways, and annual maintenance checks. These studies should be complete and thorough, and when finalized, should be brought before the Planning Commission and the people of Park Place before final approval should be considered. For the city to do anything less would be disingenuous to the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Christine? Okay. Kim Crum? Thank you so much for coming out.
My name is Kim Crum. I live in the Barlow Crest neighborhood that it's just east of the annexation applicant. I have a major problem with the conditional approval annexing and no building until the roads are fixed. That's to me, that is allowing them in and then giving them the opportunity to either change the rules so that the roads now meet some sort of new requirement. No roads are fixed at all. I just don't trust it. Their promise not to build to me is just some eyewash that is going to allow them some way in the future to find a loophole or change the rules, and the development will happen anyway without them actually fixing the roads. That's my major concern with that conditional approval. As far as the annexation factors go, the adequacy to the site, to me, transportation and roads are an adequacy. They've got that conditional approval, but when you look at Holcomb Boulevard, near the west end of the road, the houses that have been there for quite some time, the bottom of the hill, those houses have been there a long time. To widen Holcomb, to allow it to get more traffic to flow, or even to create a dedicated turn lane, those houses are so close to the road, the sidewalk is going to be right on their front door if you widen Holcomb at the bottom to allow it to have a greater volume of traffic. I just don't see how they're going to do that. As far as livability, I'm looking over at the goals. Enhance the livability of the community. I've heard one guy tonight in support. I'm not even sure if he's a neighborhood guy, the one that says that he thinks it should go forward, the first speaker. Everybody I've talked to is not in support of this, and it's for the traffic. Sure, there's noise, traffic. It won't enhance the livability of the neighborhood. As far as the school goes, Mr. Epsby, I heard you ask the guy how many classrooms are at Holcomb Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't answer you. To have 500 kids and have 28 kids per classroom, you're going to need about 20 classrooms, and I'm not sure he knows the answer to that, but I'm not sure there's that many rooms that actually exist at that school. It's not that big. I see I'm about out of time here. Yeah, my big concern is they're going to find a loophole. If you let them in, they'll find a loophole, and they won't actually fix the roads, and we will be stuck with the crappy traffic, and I'm not happy about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a comment, if they widen Holcomb down there, it'd be easier for them to get their groceries inside, because they just right out the door and into the kitchen window. You know?
Okay, all righty.
Drive-through.
Yeah.
Drive-through, yeah. Okay.
Drive-through living rooms.
All right, thank you. Janice Brown Slagle. Hi, thank you.
Hello. My name is Janice Brown Slagle. I too live in Barlow Crest. Kim and I actually have the same builder, so that's actually how we met. But I do want to comment on, I want to illustrate something. And Mr. Walter, would you be so kind as to show the aerial photo 2015? Okay, so a couple of questions. Does this include the most recent development that's occurred down behind the school?
It shows them as plats, but not actual buildings in there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really indicate construction that has already occurred?
You talk about right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, and the other thing that it doesn't really indicate, at least to me, if I understand correctly, there's another development that another annexation that has already been approved over there, yes, right where you have your cursor. So what we're looking at is really an incomplete picture of the impact that the current residents will be experiencing, because there's a lot more density that's already going into place. And this is actually larger than the existing approved annexed areas and larger than the neighborhoods that are expected to go in. So I fail to see how this could not have a serious impact on the area as a whole. One of the other things that I wanted to mention is there was talk about the impact on the water and sewer. And again, would you be so kind to go to the public facility slide?
The criteria?
Is it a criteria?
Or the, okay, yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about. This one?
Yes. So there are all of these plans in place and all of these ideals that must be met. And I want to kind of go back and say these are fairly new. When I moved into Barlow Crest in 1999, my water and sewer bill was $22 a month. As of this most recent bill, it's now $81 and change. It went up $10 a month just in 2016. My concern is it's not just the roads, it's not just the drainage, but my concern is in order to comply with this and any other unexpected fees that end up having to be paid, how much more does that bill go up? Another thing that I wanted to mention with regards to drainage is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the same developer that developed the property next to mine back in, I believe it was 2002. The contractor came in and literally chunked out the hillside and then built the house in front of what he had basically taken out, causing a huge drainage issue. It was never fixed. 3 sets of property owners had to deal with thousands of dollars worth of work in order to try to repair this problem. And I'm not convinced that there is a sincere effort going to be made to really, truly address this. I'm out of time.
You're fine. You're the last person. You get a little extra time.
Okay.
If you need a little more time, you're fine.
It's one other thing that I wanted to comment on was with regards to Mr. Rogers' statement that the 564 was preferred capacity. I don't understand what preferred capacity means. Are there no requirements for school 564 for the school size and X number of students per classroom? I'm sure I'm ignorant in that, so I don't really understand what that means. Is there no actual limit to capacity, I guess?
I think that's a policy matter that's set by the school board and their planning efforts.
Okay. And then I did want to note and point out that there has been discussion regarding the bonds. We currently have a bond. My most recent property taxes, I've spent $419 paying an additional bond that is currently in place. So does this bond that's currently in place expire? And
Yes, it will expire.
can there be more than one school bond in place at a time?
If it gets voted in, yeah.
So
Yeah.
potentially this one will be replaced immediately by another one once it expires, or it will be added on to until it expires.
Yeah,
Could
I think
possibly
he
be.
testified that it was going to expire in like 2018 or fairly soon, so.
Yes, and there was also some discussion that there was another bond that was
Right.
already going into place.
Well,
No, potentially.
That they're going to put out for a vote.
Potentially. They're thinking about it.
Nothing automatic at this
You're
point.
thinking about it.
I misunderstood then.
Yeah.
We can have them come back up and further explain that.
Okay. That was what I had to say. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much. Laura, is it appropriate to have Wes come back up and try to answer a couple of those questions?
Yes, if you want to do that, I would do it before the applicant's rebuttals.
Yes, that's what I was doing. Wes, would that be okay? It's fine, you can take your time.
Well,
that's more public testimony.
Well, it's a good point right now. Go ahead. No, go right ahead.
So I've
And
heard.
thank you for coming back up.
Oh, glad to do it. Glad to do it. 3 comments, questions, clarifications. Number of classrooms, what's preferred capacity, and school bond. Our school bond is set right now to mature in 3 phases, and it's set for, I believe, 2017, 2018, and 2019. And after that, there will be no other school bonds in the city of Oregon City or in the Oregon City School District, but there's plenty of other people who issue bonds. Metro, all kinds of other public agencies issue bonds. We're just one of many that are on a property tax bill. And the board has not made a decision yet, any decisions. It's still in deliberation mode, and so would encourage people to go to the district's website if you want to keep up with that initiative. Preferred capacity is a term that we use in the district that just says what would we, if we had a silver, a crystal ball, how many kids would we put in a classroom? We'd put probably 20 if we had the money, but we don't. And that's not how we're funded in the state of Oregon. People sometimes move into our district and thinking there's a capacity formula that's used for school funding that every 25 kids you get a classroom and so much money. It's not how it's done in Oregon, and each district kind of sets its own capacity numbers. This is our preferred capacity based upon the fact that we can afford about a classroom teacher and the supplies that go with that for about every 28 kids district-wide average. We obviously have classes that are much higher than 28, and we don't try to hide that from anybody because we don't want 28 kid classrooms in kindergarten and first grade. And so if you want below the average in younger grades, you have to be above the average in the higher grades. And that's a preferred capacity. That's not maximum capacity. That's a preferred capacity number. As far as number of classrooms, I was going to go on my, I know that I was trained never to do this in a public setting, but I was going to pull up how many teachers are at Holcomb. I don't know the exact number of classrooms, but I do know that there are 3 portable classrooms, as I stated before, modulars, and that the district is committed to maintaining or replacing as we need capacity. There's also an addition that was put in 2003 in the back, very back of the school. It's not visible from the school or even from the school's parking lot. You'd actually have to get inside the school and know that it's backed by the covered play area. That was, I believe, a 4-classroom addition, 4 or 5 classrooms. And then, but I do know that our capacity numbers are current, and that was done by a consultant who went and through and measured it all. So I'm confident that we've got the number of classrooms to support 564 students. But could we have more? Yes, because we could go above our capacity number of 28. Would we want to? No, we don't want to, but sometimes we have to go above our preferred capacities just because that's how the kids show up on the first day of school, and we've got to find a place for them to go to school. So
how many teachers do you have?
I don't know that number at Holcomb specifically, but I know that the record closes, but I won't look it up. But I know that you have regular classroom teachers, and that capacity number is those regular classrooms along with some dedicated classroom space at Holcomb Elementary as well.
Well, if you find it, you can just do the hand signal to us over here.
You know, I'd love to.
Get a 7 or 6.
I don't know if my reading glasses can go that small if I pulled up the floor plan from Holcomb, so I apologize for that. I would have gladly showed that and brought that with me if I had known that was going to come up.
I can say as a former Holcomb janitor that there
you go.
Back in the late 90s, there was approximately 16 classrooms that I cleaned, and if they've added 5
or 5
to 8
on the backside in a new addition,
then taking some out for special education needs, 20 is about the number. So there was way too many for one janitor. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's a lot of square footage.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully that answered some questions. Thank you so much for coming back
glad
up. We
to do it.
really appreciate it. All right, we have one more person that wants to testify, so after this person, we're going to do going once, going twice, and please feel free if you have something you'd like to let us know. We'd love to hear it. Tom Guile.
Good evening. Tom Guile, Oregon City resident. This is not a pro or con. This is just a clarification. Since my name came up there as having submitted some photos and text, I want to make sure that everyone who's here present, friends, seers, anybody else, commissioners, those photos were submitted not to cause influence or pro or con in any way, but a neighbor brought it up to my attention that since the last meeting it was trees were discussed. Are you aware, or are the commissioners aware that tree cutting is continuing? So I took the pictures and submitted them only as informational, again, not to cloud the issues or make it pro or con. That was it.
Questions?
Thanks for the clarification, Tom.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're now at that time, 7:30. If you want to testify, I'm giving you one more opportunity before we have applicant rebuttal. I just want to make sure it's all fair and square and everybody has an opportunity. If they didn't, they'll say, I didn't hear that. So one more time. All right, applicant, if you'd like to make some rebuttal comments or not, whatever you'd like.
Thank you, Chair McGriff, members of the Planning Commission. Mike Robinson, again, on behalf of the applicant. So let me begin with the question that Commissioner Mabey asked Mr. Givens about the 20-foot strip. I think those are appropriate questions to ask. I think Rick Givens answered them correctly, and of course I tried to answer your question about future development. The only thing I would add to that discussion, Chairperson McGriff, is that it's not conceivable that the Sears family created a strip in 1912 that would anticipate a 2017 annexation. And the evidence before you is that that strip was created with a very old plat. So I don't believe it's not a fiction of annexation. No disrespect meant to you, Commissioner. Maybe I appreciate your questions. I think they're clearly helpful to the public. But the strip is there as a fact. It was created many years ago, and it prevents the creation of an island. I thought Mr. Rogers' testimony tonight was very insightful and very helpful, and I think he should be commended for the clear answers that he gave. And so I want to do two things with his testimony. I want to say, first of all, of course, he's in the best position to know whether the school district has capacity or not. And he's unequivocally told you that it does. But look at the first page of his March 13th letter, and I'm reading at the bottom paragraph, quote, "The district has adequate secondary school enrollment capacity to accommodate the forecasted middle and high school students generated by the annexation. However, in 2026-27, assuming 35 new elementary students, Holcomb would be slightly above capacity at 569. That's 5 students above capacity. It's clearly not an impact, and it gives them 10 years to find that capacity." The applicant appreciated Mr. Giffords' testimony. He has a particular perspective on behalf of the Oregon City Business Alliance to offer, and I think the point he made that this site has been in the urban growth boundary for many years is a good one, and it's anticipated in your plan that these sites are how the city accommodates future development. Let me address Ms. Kaczynski's testimony. She's not a city resident. She said that a couple of times. I want to address the factors, which is what she raised. She cited factor 3, adequacy and availability of public facilities and services. If you look at the February 27 staff report, pages 17 to 22, the staff went through all the public facilities and services and concluded, based on the evidence, in fact, there are adequate facilities and services. She cited factor 5, natural hazards identified by the city. There are no natural hazards. The only thing that's identified by the city is in the far north steep slopes, and that can be dealt with at the land division. She addressed factor 6, which says any significant adverse effects on specially designated open space and other types of designations. There's no significant adverse effect. The only designation for an historic resource is the Barlow Trail. We've already testified that that's something, and your staff has told you that's something that they'll capture at the land division stage. And it's not affected by urbanization of the subject property at time of annexation. The last factor is factor 7, lack of any significant adverse effects on the economic, social, and physical environment of the community. This is normal urban impact. Yeah, there's noise. Yes, there's going to be light intrusion. All the things that explain why people often live in the country. But are they significant? No. And in fact, I'm not even sure you could call them adverse effects. They're the price you pay for living with other people in a community. Ms. Crum testified about condition of approval 14. Let me be clear, and I said this at February 27th. Condition of approval 14 goes to the satisfaction of the transportation planning rule, but it also benefits the annexation. But as a legal matter, it's allowed as a way to satisfy the transportation planning rule, which applies only to the zoning map amendment. You don't need a speech about it, but the reality is ODOT, the city's transportation engineer, and our transportation engineer, your assistant city attorney, and your planner all crafted condition of approval 14 together. And as much as anyone might like to weasel out of a condition, it's not possible. It's a legal standard. So let me add one last thing, and then I'll conclude. What's going on around there? Our traffic study, for example, addressed it. Your plans, which have been a requirement in state planning for over 30 years, addressed it. There is no cumulative standard for impacts of this application because your code says when reviewing a proposed annexation. It doesn't say in conjunction with other annexations. So we appreciate the time everyone took tonight. We think we've answered their questions. We hope we have to your satisfaction. And we ask you to close the public hearing and recommend approval with condition of approval 14 to the City Commission. And we thank you for your time and courtesy.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Thank you.
Okay. What's your pleasure? Do you want me to close the public hearing?
I so move.
Well, we don't need to make a motion. It's just a consensus. Yes. Okay. All right, we are, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to close the public hearing, and we will probably be asking some questions, and there will be some deliberation. Staff, I hate to do this, but I need a 5-minute break, if we may, please. So talk amongst yourselves, stand up and stretch. We'll be right back.
Jumping jacks, deep knee bend.
No, it's okay. It's good.
Okay.
No, I
Now,
can just see the top of a head, that's all.
but he hadn't unpaused it, so now
Yes.
you can go.
Okay. Now we are officially back on the record. Thank you so much. I hope everybody took advantage of that little stretch break. All right, gentlemen, what would you like to do? What is your pleasure? Do you have questions? Public Works staff is out in the hallway. They have said they would come in if I start waving. So if you have any questions for them.
Well, I guess I'll jump in and say I've got some real concerns about the stormwater and this little road that doesn't make it an island. But my big concern, I mean, we have a stormwater plan, but from my observations, it doesn't seem like it's adequate for what's going on up there. I mean, every part of the city's got a different, geography and hydrology.
You want me to weigh one of them in? Okay.
No. And I've looked at the plan, and we've got Alita's comments. And yeah, you could engineer a solution for things, but part of their solution is to let the water flow off from the county land to the north, and then it will go wherever it happens to go, as opposed to, a specific plan to deal with the gallons and gallons of water that will be coming off. I'm also a little concerned, based on some of the testimony we got last time, that the city's building inspection staff, code enforcement staff, may not be adequate to ensure that compliance is occurring with the buildings. I mean, the one guy talked about Holcomb just draining right into his backyard. It isn't connected to any sort of system, and either the developer should have connected it or Holcomb should have had it connected. And granted, Holcomb's been there for decades, but I'm a little worried that we might be, or the adequacy of public facilities might be enough staff to do the job, as opposed to, is there enough pipage? So, so those are my concerns. The issue about the tree cutting, yeah, that would normally be something that would just, but it's a nursery. I mean, they grow things and cut things down. So if there's any place that tree cutting is to me is not an issue, it's here. Granted, they were very mature trees, but still, they have a forestry permit. So if anybody's going to cut lumber down, it would be this place. So from that aspect, I don't have any concerns of that.
They have a forestry permit?
Yeah, they said they complied with the. So, it really just kind of comes down to stormwater, and I guess that's kind of my big thing. I mean, water's got to go somewhere, and right now it seems to be going to the wrong places.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Chairperson McGriff, staff has just informed me that there was an email placed in the record on March 7th that wasn't distributed to you. Okay. And so I am going to ask that you reopen the record, and I'm going to read this short email to you. I don't think it has any new information in it, but I'm going to read it into the record with your permission, and then we're going to give the applicant an opportunity to respond to it. If that is okay with you, I need consensus from the commission to proceed.
My head's nodding.
Well, Yes, with that limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we are reopening it for this email and this email only. And we're going to limit rebuttal to less than 5 minutes.
Okay, this is an email from Lynn Cherrier. Cherrier, dated Tuesday, March 7th, 2017. To Pete Walter. Good morning, Mr. Walter. My name is Jim Cherrier. I live at 15998 South Umberview Lane in Oregon City. I'm writing regarding the annexation of 35.65 acres adjacent to my property. It is your file number AN 16-2004. I also own property located at 15990 South Umberview Lane. Neither parcel is in the UGB. My south property line is bordered by both the City of Oregon City and the proposed annexation. First, let me state that I am not in opposition to this annexation. However, I do have some concerns. Primarily, the proposed use of the half street addressed on page 7 of the application form. As stated, the street would possibly be restricted to emergency vehicle use. How would this be monitored? Expansion of this street would likely require taking my property into the UGB. Is that assumption correct? I will be attending the March 13th meeting and would like your comments then, if not before. Regards, Jim Cherrier. I understand he did not testify, but he was under the assumption that this letter was in. So that's why I wanted to get it before you, and that is the content of the letter. We will add it to the record and allow the applicant an opportunity to respond.
Please.
Chairperson McGriff, members of the Planning Commission, Mike Robinson again on the record on behalf of the applicant. I understand, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm just going to say Jim. I understand what his email says. I think we heard that discussion in part at the February 27th meeting. The only thing I would say in response to that is that there is no plan to develop that street. It is not part of the annexation. We do not own it. And there is no plan to use it for emergency vehicle access. That's why we had Mr. Gibbons submit a letter demonstrating that it's possible to have 2 access points required by the fire code to serve this site because it will have over 30 dwellings from Holcomb Road. So the status of the applicant's representation today is we're not going to rely on the 20-foot strip. Frankly, discussion of that's been more trouble than it's worth. We're not going to rely on that. It's not part of the application, and the applicant provide 2 access points from Holcomb Road. Thank you.
An apology for the interruption.
Appreciate it. You want to close?
Go ahead and close the public record.
Yes, we are now reclosing the public hearing. Thank you so much. Thank you for that, Carrie.
Okay, and I would say that that's my understanding from the testimony that it was now 2 off of Holcomb as opposed to a 90 off.
Well,
So
I think
With regard to Commissioner Mabey's comments, I wanted to remind the Commission that Ms. Froman Goodrich and Ms. Marshall are
Yes.
here from
Yes.
from the staff,
Yes.
and they might
I-
be able to respond.
yes, I asked him if he wanted me to. They know that if I need them, I just have to raise my hand and they will come in.
Give them that look.
Yes,
Yeah.
give him the look. So
And-
he
and
said no.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that's, to re-summarize, my concern is that current stormwater plans are not adequate to address this location. And since annexation isn't I checked the 5 boxes, you have to let me do it. I checked the 5 boxes, please do it. It's not a right, it's a privilege. I think we might want to revisit the stormwater stuff before we allow this much development.
Yep. Okay. Bob Mahoney, sir.
Well, we're sitting here as a quasi-judicial body, which the state requires us to act as such. In so doing, we're obliged by state law to take into consideration findings. Now, the findings that have been put before us in terms of public testimony and the applicant's application have been entered into the public record, including the staff report. And from my point of view, I think that the findings meet the standards of the ordinances that the city has adopted for the development of this community. To do otherwise would not be fair to either side. we've got to walk that thin line. I haven't had this much fun since I met my drill instructor in the Marine Corps. But I'm going to support this application because we have before us an application for annexation only. The conjecture as to whether or not the public facilities are in place are obviously a factor that we have to take into consideration. We do not have construction drawings in front of us. We're not required to have construction drawings in front of us. To assume that this city cannot respond to the demand for public services at this particular site is a presumption that I'm not going to take on. I assume that this community will and can, through its ordinances, be able to do that. And our technical and professional staff is able to meet those demands. It takes money to run this community, and it's going to take money to develop that property. And it's going to take even more money to bring our standards of public response up to a point where intersections, road widths, sidewalks, schools, all that come into focus and can respond to the demands that this piece of property is going to require. Now, I know I'm being a little wordy here, but we've sat through about 10 hours of public testimony. We've read about that much staff reports and technical advisory documents. And we're being asked to put into a few words to make all this make sense, at least to me, so that when this thing is appealed, and it will be, or it has all the potential to be appealed, that the findings that we entered into the record are adequate. So I think they are. And I think our planning staff has done an adequate and superlative, there's that word again, job of putting before us findings to consider and adopt. So I'm going to support this application on the basis of the statements that I've just made. Thank you.
Can you top that?
What, how many years? Give me 30 years. We've had some excellent testimony from the public. We've had great presentations from staff as well as our applicant, as well as fellow commissioners. For me, I've focused primarily on the transportation, and I think separate from transportation, some of the other concerns regarding public facilities, sewage, et cetera, I'm confident that what the staff has presented in their findings is assuages those concerns. Specific to traffic, I think that how this has been proposed in condition of approval number 14, in addition to chapter 1204, for me, covers enough to get over the gripe about what is this going to do for traffic and increasing traffic. Damon just said something that resonated a little bit about that I internalize of what is our role with all of this, and similarly with traffic, we all also have a role where if we're sitting at a failing stoplight and we're having to wait 3 signal sessions, you're still sitting in that light, contributing to that traffic. We're going to get more traffic as time goes on. Maybe at 5 signals, I won't drive. And that's how it works. And so we're all part of that same problem that's adding to this. But that being said, before anything can actually be built or even permitted to be built, we have to address the problems in Holcomb and 213, as well as having a mobility study that ideally will come up with solutions that might, that will address some of this. It's in the urban growth boundary. It's been in the urban growth boundary for a long time. And apart from some of the pain points about just not liking stuff that isn't relevant to the application, I can support it.
I guess it's me.
It is.
Okay. A couple of things. I have some concerns about the school capacity, and I think the memo that was provided this evening almost gets me there. I would like to hear from Alita a little bit more about stormwater this evening, and I want to talk about or hear about off-site stormwater capacity and off-site facilities that can carry or manage stormwater from existing developments. To hear about existing capacity and pinch points and things like that should be addressed in our stormwater master plan. That I don't know if they are, to be honest with you, to be able to not only under best practices to deal with infiltration, but also to be able to convey the stormwater to an acceptable location. I mean, because it goes to, through different properties, and I'm not sure of, just exactly how that actually happens. And so that's a concern I have. And then the other one is traffic, of course. And, I've been looking at this condition 14. It bothers me a little. And I'm sorry for not bringing this up earlier, but if you say, in accordance with the city, county, state transportation requirements, no development except that permitted under county's future urban FU10 zoning designation in effect as of the date of the application submittal, I guess I'm having trouble with the words of that, because if you have the property annexed, unless you have an FU10 zoning designation in the city, you are no longer in the city. And you don't really have, I don't, and I'll ask the city attorney that question. I don't really know if you have the ability to administer density under a county zoning designation once you've annexed the property.
Well, FU10 is ours.
FU10 is a county, and it would be annexed to the city. So I would think that you would, at the very least, you'd need to have some other kind of acceptable zoning designation that is concomitant to the county zoning designation. I don't think you can do an extra jurisdictional reach to the FU10 aspect. And then I guess with the traffic as well, I have a little bit of heartburn with a conditional annexation. The public facilities are either there or they're not. And I realize that we, as a city, are going to accept a certain amount of roadway capacity, and this is kind of the situation that we're in right now until we actually get some actual improvements, have some alternative modes to help alleviate some of that. I don't know. I'm sure it won't alleviate all of it, but I would really prefer to have all of those issues worked out before a condition of approval like this is written, so it doesn't have to be written in the first place. So those are my two concerns, and I'd like to hear a little bit about stormwater, if I could. Thanks.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioner.
Before you start, since I'm the last one, let me go ahead and make my comments, and then we'd love to hear everything.
Yeah.
I would say that I have some of the same concerns that Damon has with regard to stormwater, which is why I wanted to say that. And I've had concerns over several of the proposals that have come forth in this particular area, period. I have I have extreme confidence in the staff, but the staff's not the one doing it. Staff's not the one doing the work, making it happen. I agree with you in the fact that you said that we've had some very compelling testimony about water everywhere, and I think having more pervious surface is not going to help that. It needs to be, well, pervious surface is going to help it, but impervious surface is not going to help it. Our big, again, if I ask anybody in town, guess what your biggest concern is? Traffic, 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 and I understand what one of the persons who testified stated that He has a new acronym. I know everybody says, well, gee, I'm here now, so nobody else can come in, and you're just going to make it worse. And I'm sure everybody's had that feeling. I don't know. I said that last time that we have a death by 1,000 cuts. And I'm not really sure how we, how many Band-Aids do we have to alleviate the little nicks and cuts that we're getting, because it's not getting any better. I, too, have a concern about conditional stuff. So that's all I'm going to say for right now. Ladies, take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. I have Wendy Marshall here. She's our Development Projects Manager, and she's going to talk a little bit about the development standards and some of the past. And I am Elite from Goodrich, the Public Works City Engineer. So I'll let Wendy start off for.
Good evening, Wendy Marshall, Development Projects Engineer Manager.
Is the red light on
Yes.
that mic?
It is.
Okay,
Can you
good.
not hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just could.
It doesn't sound like it's on here either.
You're good.
Yeah.
I can be loud. I do have a little diagram. I'm not sure, Pete, can you go back to the aerial? And I can show you this.
Okay.
Is this going to...
Okay, so there's just one.
yeah.
May I just
Hey,
may I make a procedural comment?
Can we just hang on just a quick
No,
second?
I'm sorry, you can't take your documents into the record.
That's what I was...
From state.
I was just
Okay.
going to ask our city
Sorry
attorney.
about that. Yeah.
I was going to
Sorry.
refer to our city attorney.
Basically just a drawing from our map showing, do we have a pointer, maybe? Do we have a laser pointer that could work?
Yep.
It was just showing where we're.
It's new information, and
It's
we've
new
closed
information.
the public hearing.
We can't put this new map in.
Jesus.
Okay.
But I'm fairly certain that does this come from the
Stormwater
master plan?
No, this is just
Okay, then we're
a
not
screen
gonna-
clip from our.
We have to reopen
map.
the record to take it in.
No,
Okay.
I don't want to do that.
Okay, one of the big concerns for drainage, first of all, Sunnybrook Ridge has been referred to as a problem area. First of all, it was under the old standards. And it is under construction in a very wet time, so it really looks bad too. This is Sunnybrook. Everything goes up, and we don't have it really on here, but it goes up and comes out Forsyth Road here. What's going to happen with this development is it will come up here. They will need to get a drainage easement, but there's another draw that goes up here, and it's in much better condition. The draw that it goes into is not as steeply sloped. It's more gradual, and it's in better condition. So this stormwater will be, some of it will go out here, maybe in the into Holcomb, a small part, but the rest of it will go up this way, will not even go into this system. The new stormwater standards that we adopted April of 2015 generally changes the entire methodology for looking at stormwater. And in a nutshell, in the old standards that most organizations used, when you develop, you have to take the peak flow rate and you have to limit that. But it doesn't do anything to limit the total volume of stormwater. And the new standards look at, it's in a different view. First of all, we have to use infiltration to the maximum extent practical. And we look at vegetated swells and putting in vegetated systems as best we can to mitigate the runoff as well. And also, it limits even further than just taking the peak runoff. It limits it even more, so you're in essence not creating any downstream erosion. And this is a new method that a lot of the local cities are going with. As far as the request for a hydrology report, this is something that we, I believe, are able to request. And what we will do is consult with our stormwater consultant that did our stormwater manual, and we'll consult with them to see if this is appropriate, what would be the scope of that report, and that would come at the time of the development application. And we also definitely want to hear from the neighbors who have been living there that see what happens, and then when we do the development, we can use that for the design engineer to incorporate into their design.
Does that help your?
The other question that I had was whether or not there was enough adequate staff to inspect and ensure that everything was built to proper standards. Or are you shorthanded and everybody's kind of on a waiting list and you're getting to people when you can, as opposed to?
Well, right now we are busy and we are a lean staff all around. And I don't think we should make this decision based upon our current staffing levels. However, the city's current policy is that the design engineer is required, and we have an agreement that they provide inspection services as well as the city. We, right now, we do have 2 inspectors, and they go and do the major inspections. And like I said, it's hard to know when this development comes in. How will we be staffed? Hopefully we will be adequately staffed.
Well, my main concern is we heard testimony that a drainage system coming out of the Holcomb property was just an open pipe into the person's backyard. So did the developer not connect like he was supposed to, and therefore we didn't spot it with our staff? Or is it's an old system and it's draining the way it's supposed to, and congratulations on your pond? Or you know, I mean, that's my concern.
I would need to know more specifics and how long ago it
But-
was. And
But I guess my
it's on
question-
the information he's referring to is on the record, so you could take a look at that and.
Yeah, I guess
It's
my
not really-
my question.
Not really, I'm not sure if
Yeah,
it's
it's not-
relevant.
No, I don't,
Well-
I know it isn't, but he's asking a question, and as a planning commissioner, I'm going to give him, I think we should give him a little leeway. He's got a point. I know he's coming to it.
Well, and it does come down to staffing, but what you've said is, at this point in time, for the workload that you have the staff to handle the capacity in a timely manner.
I can probably, so new developments that are currently being constructed right now, they are being properly inspected to the standard needed for the inspection to be able to accept the public improvements. That would include water, stormwater, sanitary sewer. We don't see that there would be a change in our requirements for inspection to make sure that public improvements are meeting the standard.
Okay, I mean, my concern is that either inspections are being unduly delayed or being, set aside for expedience, and I know that's not a good thing, but I don't want to add to your workload if you can't handle your current workload, and that's something for the city commission to deal with, but my job is not to exacerbate the situation. So, but you've said that you're able to do your job with what you have, so that answers my question. And
Any other questions for Alita and Wendy? I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Commissioner Espy asked me a couple of questions with regard to the FU10.
Right.
And I think I would like to clarify that the condition is not attached to the annexation. The condition is attached to the zone change. And I understand that that's kind of a distinction without a difference. But once we annex, the land's going to be part of the city, right? The land's going to be part of the city, and it will be. And that that is a decision that will be made, and the condition has to do with when development can occur on this annexed area pursuant to a zone change. So the condition is attached to the zone change. It's the zone change that allows development to occur at urban densities. The annexation doesn't allow development to occur at urban densities. It's the zone change that does that. And I think what we tried to do with condition 14 was say that no development except that permitted under the county's future urban F10 zoning designation, which would be 30-something acres, would be 3 houses. And let's say the applicant files an application for one of these houses in the city. The planning staff is going to review that against the Clackamas County zoning code standards, setbacks and building heights and accessory structures that are the county's requirements today. And that was our what we envisioned.
Yeah.
And we did that because we had determined that the traffic from those 3 houses and anything that could come from those 3 houses will not significantly affect the transportation routes. So this was limited to transportation, and that's what we're talking about here. And we're trying to top development that exceeds the 3 houses to allow for the adoption of a refinement plan and the alternative mobility standards. So that's what we were trying to get at. If you have some different language, we'd be open to it. But that was what we were trying to do.
Well, I think to get around the whole FU10 issue is you'd probably just want to specify the density that they are allowed to develop at until they get the transportation study or the transportation issues rectified. No?
Well, if you think that the language here of the permitted FU10 zoning designation uses is ambiguous.
Well, do we actually even have that in front of us?
Well,
Probably not.
I see what Commissioner Espy's getting at. We're, as a city, referring to a county standard, whereas if we just said, except the 3 houses, just say, except the 3 houses permitted under the, then you can say, look, we just said it's 3 houses.
Yeah.
And, and the FU10 just happens to be the historic reference for why we have 3, as opposed to 5 or 9 or 27.
What I'm doing is exploring a potential loophole.
Because
Well,
you
I
can
mean,
build
but
on
you-
it.
Right.
Right now.
I'm not saying that you guys would, but property could change hands. A completely different interpretation could happen 10 years down the road. People will even that's why I don't like conditional annexations, is because the annexation gets put up on a shelf. People forget about the condition, and they don't realize that there is a condition. A lot of times, administratively, there can be problems that way. But that's not relevant to this talk right now. So, But I just think that there should be some other kind of language other than county future urban FU10 if it's going to be annexed into the city.
What is the loophole? I'm not understanding the loophole.
Well, I don't know. I was just making sure that if you were to annex into the city and you had a condition that said this has to be FU10, and they decided to develop, and they said, well, you can't really make us build to FU10 density because we're not in the county anymore. We're in the city.
You have no FU10, so
You
we're
have no
gonna pick
FU10,
something.
so it becomes an irrelevant part of the condition. It doesn't have any validity.
Is there a way that we can take that accept line out?
Well, here's the problem. The accept line allows them to develop something which they are
which they can
entitled
do.
to do.
Right.
It's whether or not, okay, so let's say an applicant did come in and say, you can't subject me to county zoning because I'm in the city. We still have a condition that says no development at urban densities can occur until the applicant complies with this. So you can't get a city zone. And if you're saying you don't like the county zone, you've got, I'm not sure that you've got a loophole that somebody gets urban development in.
That's what I'm here to find out. I'm not saying that there is.
I'm not seeing a way.
Right, okay.
And I think that the city and the county have intergovernmental agreements that
Right.
allow them to work together for coordinated planning.
There are-
And I think that this specifically says we're going to use today's FU10 uses, which is going to be 3 houses and some accessories. I mean, they allow accessory structures.
Right.
They allow some home occupations, I'm guessing. So there's more than just 3 houses. And I think that's why we did it that way.
Okay.
Carrie, I've got a question. So they get into the city. They own the property. They have a right, as a property owner, to make any application they want to. They have that right. So they make an application for, what's the next zone down from that, Laura?
It would be R10.
Or what?
R10.
Okay, so they make that application. We're obliged to put it before us and listen to the application.
Well, I mean,
Deny it.
you're right. We have to listen to lots of applications. We don't have to approve them.
That's right. That's my
Right?
point.
And we've got a condition here that says no development may occur. So the next thing that's going to happen is not that they're going to get a zone designation through this process. The
Right.
next thing that's going to happen, they're going to come with a subdivision, right? And it's going to either be 3 lots or it's going to be 100 and something lots. And at that point, we're going to evaluate whether this condition is satisfied, right? And we're going to deny it if it doesn't satisfy the condition and a whole host of other criteria.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's passes muster and it's able to be used in that way.
But we can't guarantee that something different is going to happen. We can't foretell the future. We can't do that. We have to act on what's before us tonight.
My crystal ball is in the shop right now.
Right, right. And we're obliged to act on what's before us tonight, not conjecture. I'm uncomfortable with that conjecture stuff. What if, maybe, that kind of stuff. My vote is for what's happening before me
he's in trouble
tonight.
with the babies.
That's what I'm going to vote
No,
on.
I mean, I can appreciate that that annexation is a step, and it is a big step. It is a big step towards an urban goal. I can appreciate that. But we have, it's been in the urban growth boundary, we planned for it, we've got utility plans, we've got all of these steps in place to take that step, plus we have this very clear condition, plus we have 1208. I mean, have you, OCMC 1208 says you can't build anything until these roads are fixed. And that code section has to be changed
We're not changing.
before development can happen. So we need a code amendment that will come along with the refinement plan and the alternative mobility measures. So, I mean, I can appreciate that this is a big step, but it's there are a lot of big steps between here and houses, in my view. Staff's view. Sorry.
Anything else?
Just one further reiteration on transportation. Quoting John Replicler's report on this from the transportation impact analysis, says there's virtually no effect on the intersection of 213 and Beaver Creek.
Mm-hmm.
I know, and we have testimony to the contrary that
Yes,
it is.
But this is the professional.
yes, I
staff
understand,
testimony.
and people's perception unfortunately doesn't seem to count for anything. So
Well,
it's
I think most of the testimony wasn't 213 in Beaver Creek. It was
That is
213 in
correct.
Redland.
Redland, yes,
right.
excuse me,
And I
213 in
agree,
Redland.
that's a
Yes.
different, whole different animal than.
Yes.
I just went back to my notes because anytime the traffic engineer says virtually no effect, you write it down.
Right.
Yeah, and I write it down
Yeah.
because I'm a skeptic.
Yeah, I'd be less concerned about that intersection than I would be at the one at Redland.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, the one in Redland's like hell on wheels.
Yeah, I think that's true. What he says.
Okay, what do you guys want to do?
Well, I want to approve it.
So
You're
shall we
making-
all adjourn to Menchie's and have some yogurt, or?
So you're going to make a motion
I had
to
different
approve?
ideas about that.
I will motion to approve.
Move. I move.
You okay? I will move. I'm looking for the number.
Z.
I got it.
AN
I move
16003.
to approve annexation AN 16-004/ZC 16-001.
I second.
With the conditions of approval as written.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded that the conditions of approval as written be adopted by this commission. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Mabey?
Well, I still have stormwater concerns, but since we've heard that the rules have changed since the other property was developed, I will vote aye.
Commissioner Espy?
No.
Chairperson McGriff?
I prefer to be last, thank you.
Commissioner Henkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Honey?
Aye.
Chairperson McGriff?
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
You want to notice when the next, this was a recommendation
Yes.
to the city commission. The city commission will hear this matter on
April 5th, I believe.
April 5th. The next public hearing is April 5th at 7 p.m.
7 p.m. here.
in the City Commission chambers that we are currently sitting in right now today. So we still have further business, so if you would exit very quietly. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending tonight and coming through all the meetings and the hearings. We really, really appreciate it. Your testimony is important.
Thank you.
You want to welcome Tom back
Thanks for
up?
everything, you guys.
Tom, come on up.
Old buddy, old. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Laura, you have any communications for us?
I do have some communications.
And thank you, Alita and Wendy.
All right, first off with the good news. As you know, we had a readoption of the Beaver Creek Road concept plan that went before you. The original Beaver Creek Road concept plan process started more than 10 years ago, and it's gone around through the court system. And we recently readopted it for narrow reasons. That readoption got appealed to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals. LUBA made a decision affirming the city's approval, and then that decision got appealed to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals did come up with a dissent for that, so they sided with LUBA and the city as well. So they provided a decision without a written decision. So it's a strong decision generally when you don't have a written opinion that describes it. So we are very excited about that. So we have support from the Land Use Board of Appeals and the Court of Appeals that the city did the right thing and was upheld. So
Good job.
yes, smiles and cheers and claps.
Absolutely.
So it's good. It means that we're doing the right thing, and we have had those court decisions to support that. So we're happy about that. The other thing is I wanted to give you a heads up on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. We will have a public event on June 3rd, which is a Saturday. It'll be at OMSI during Rose Festival. Yes. And we'll do the unveiling of the Riverwalk. We'll do the large Riverwalk project, which is again about a $60 million project at the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, and then we'll also unveil what Phase 1 will be.
So I saw that, and I guess from a standpoint of a citizen, I question having it at OMSI. They, number one, charge for parking now. That kind of, in my opinion, precludes a lot of the people in this community. And we've got spaces that are free that have much better parking than OMSI does.
And they're here.
And it's here in our, I know this is a
20
bigger.
miles downstream.
Well, we did the last public event here at the college, and so it is a regional project, and we want to make sure that we reflect that regionally.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah, so we're really excited, and we hope that you come and join us. We'll send out more information, and there'll be more public notices.
I don't like the parking thing, though.
Yeah, well, the parking thing is not good at OMSI.
Okay.
Yeah. Or
No,
Take
that's not
afternoon
going to
event,
happen.
so perhaps
you
you
could
can
take the
go
orange
before
line.
your
if you
evening
want.
Starlight Parade events.
I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
That's what they want you to do. That's the secret.
Okay.
Social engineering.
That's it for my
ploy.
communications.
What's the exit there? That's right. There's an OMSI exit
No, there's an OMSI stop.
Stop.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it stops right there.
It does exit, but you can exit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Let her talk.
she's done.
Oh, done?
That's it.
Thank you.
Are there any communications from the commission? Bob, have you been doing miraculous and marvelous things with the TAC these days?
I've been waiting for my rib to heal. I cracked a rib last time I went to a public meeting.
At the meeting?
For the Riverwalk.
You cracked it at the meeting?
I cracked it at the meeting.
Wow.
I am sorry about that. I was
No,
not
don't be
aware
sorry.
of that.
Don't be sorry. I just
Dedication
be
to the city you
sympathetic.
have.
You don't have to.
I am sympathetic.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
But I am sorry that you're hurt.
Oh no, I'm healed now.
That hurts me that you're hurt.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so ready to adjourn?
Actually, I just had one thing to say that we will not be having a meeting in 2 weeks. We'll have a cancellation. We have nothing on the agenda.
Zach,
You get a day off. You've been
Zach,
working
is
really
anything
hard.
exciting?
Spring break,
Okay,
we
hang on, gentlemen. So I'm asking Zach if anything. I'm asking for Commissioner Communications. Anything exciting happening?
Did we start our communications?
Nothing that I want to keep us longer.
Okay, Paul.
Nothing you want to
Anything
share.
you'd like to report?
I got nothing.
Damon.
No. The alternative mobility study for
Yes.
213 had a second meeting.
Gentlemen,
But
excuse me.
we're basically still hashing through ideas. We've narrowed down a few of them, like the little silly First Street loop-de-loop is long
Are we
gone.
going to get an update before they come up with some recommendation? Because I'd certainly like to hear something. I've heard it from him, which I feel very comfortable with, but I think the commission should have an update as it works its way through the process.
Can I?
It will go before you
Well, yeah, but I
for
mean,
adoption.
I'd like to hear something. What I'm suggesting, not being clear because I'm tired, I'd like to hear something about it before we have to adopt it, like a work session or something to see where they are for our comments.
I've got two nuts and bolts comments. Clean the margins with the street cleaner to get all the crap out of the bike trails.
Well, Lita was here earlier.
And
Should have checked
when
with
you
her.
do chip sealing, if you have to do chip sealing, I hate it, but if you have to do it, go all the way to the curbs, please, so you don't have this.
Laura is not in
this
charge of that.
lip and margin. I know, but she knows someone who is.
She knows people.
She
And Fifth Street and Lynn. Oh my God, that is like the worst street to ride down. You take your life in your hands.
I can
That's all I
believe
got.
that.
So
Forward those long.
Sorry.
Yeah, there is a award at the state for $50,000 grants for innovative transportation projects that you can apply through Metro. So Metro is willing to put in a letter of support as one of the places that can get these monies. But
Thank you. Yeah.
And I just want to say that I really appreciate all of your perseverance in listening to all the testimony. We've had some really tough hearings over the last couple of years, and even though sometimes you just kind of want to scream and tear your hair out, I do want you to know that I appreciate it, and I hear it from the community. People tell me how much they appreciate being able to come here and speak before us because they know that we are listening to them and that we are open to hearing what they have to say. And I can tell you, for me personally, that means a lot because I don't hear that otherwise.
That can be frustrating, yeah.
And
for
people
folks.
get very frustrated. They don't want to feel like their time is taken for granted and they're being taken for granted. And since we get paid the big bucks and Bob's going to get us those checks,
You bet.
I just wanted you to know that I hear this on a fairly regular basis from the community.
Well, I want to follow up on that, if you don't mind. You know, sometimes I sit down here and I act like I'm pontificating, and I don't mean to do that at all.
What do you mean, act?
Well, at least I take my hat off. But Paul said something the other day that really struck home to me, and that's we sit here and our vote means something, and he takes it very personal, and I do too, and it means something. And what we've got to do, and it's hard, I know it's hard, is to separate some of these findings that we hear in testimony that are emotional and political by nature that really belong upstairs to the city council, the city commission. They're the ones that have to deal with the political aspects of it. We got applicants that come in here, and we
I think that
require
planning
them.
commissioners can put their little spin and influence on policy as
Well, that's what they're there for. You know, they asked to be
Yeah.
elected for that role. But,
especially.
and I appreciate these people
Especially
coming
with
down
planning
and
issues.
giving their testimony, and I appreciate their emotions involved and stuff like that. I'm trying to untangle myself here
Yes,
with my
yeah.
colleague.
It's easy because there's a lot of wires down in there.
But in the process of acting as a quasi-judicial body, we have to separate those findings. We have to allow findings, encourage findings to be entered into the record so that when these things get appealed like they did, they stand up. And I realize that's tough. And, you know, I don't enjoy looking at people and say, well, prove it. You know, the applicant's got to prove it. The onus is on him, according to state law, or at least Fasano. And so when I sit down here and, you know, verbalize,
Fidget.
I'm trying to get up enough guts on my end of the table to hold up my end, and I want you people to know why I'm doing it. So that's why I do it. You know, I can sit down here and be silent and just say A or nay, and you'd never know what I was thinking about. But when I you know, Tom, when you're, you know, sitting down there and you want to represent the voter and stuff like that, they have a right to know why we voted, see, and what our concerns are. But our concerns should be something that apply, not just what if and maybe and that kind of stuff, you see.
What do you have a problem with babies for?
Bob, I want you to know that I don't think anybody that I have been working with on this commission does that. I think everyone's entitled to their opinion, and since you are still in many ways a land use planner, we're skeptics to begin with. So I understand what you're saying, and what I appreciate about this group is that there is a diversity of opinions, and there is people bring up things that I may not have thought of, and I appreciate that because it makes me think harder and makes me try to better understand what the issues are. And I think we don't make decisions based on emotions. I mean, I never wrote a staff report based on emotion, and I don't make any decisions based on that. I know what the criteria is, and if not, somebody will, over there, the nice person that I know, will make sure it gets beat into our head. So I don't think you really have to worry about that. I know sometimes it sounds like it because we may not all understand where each of us is going with our thought process.
Well, we're passionate about what we do, and I know when I sit up here, I put every fiber of my being into listening and trying to make a good decision based on what I've got.
I've read so much stuff, my head was starting to
regardless
spin.
of what, you know, I mean, I got to take all the friendships and everything else out of it and look at just what I see as the balance. Period.
Ditto. Can we go now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I was recused from any communications.
Oh,
You-
yeah?
no.
No, I just
I
We didn't think
looked
so.
down at that end of the
Said you
table and said, do you have anything interesting to report? And there was no response, so we are officially adjourned. Thank you,
A
staff.
quick question though. What would have happened if this would have ended up in a 3-3 tie?
It still is a
You would've went-
recommendation.
Put a gun on